What if I told you there's a painting where everything you see is actually a riddle? Where broken guitar strings predict religious wars? Where tilted globes mark secret locations? And where a distorted skull can only be seen if you know exactly where to stand? Or maybe you'd prefer the canvas that's basically a medieval meme compilation, packed with over 120 visual jokes that were hilarious 500 years ago but completely lost on us today. And then there's the painting that breaks the fourth wall so hard it makes your head spin. Today, we're cracking the code on 3 masterpieces that are basically visual puzzles wrapped in pretty pictures. Trust me, once you see what these artists were really up to, you'll never look at classical art the same way again. Let's start with what looks like a straightforward double portrait, but is actually a masterclass in hidden symbolism. Hans Holbein's The Ambassadors seems simple enough. 2 wealthy men surrounded by expensive scientific instruments. But Holbein, who spent his career navigating the dangerous waters of Henry VIII's court, packed this painting with more secrets than a spy novel. First, let's talk about that weird gray smear at the bottom. Most people walk right past it, but if you position yourself at just the right angle, either high on the right or low on the left, that smear transforms into a perfect human skull. It's called anamorphosis, and it was cutting-edge visual technology in 1533. But why hide a skull? Because death was Jean de Dinteville's family motto. The guy on the left literally lived by, "Remember you must die." But look closer. There's actually a second skull hidden on his hat as a tiny medallion. And if you squint at the top left corner, you'll spot a crucifix barely visible behind the curtain. Now, here's where it gets really clever. All those fancy scientific instruments, they're broken. The lute has a snapped string, a symbol of discord. The Lutheran hymnal is open to pages that were never actually printed together in real life. Even the globes are wrong. The terrestrial one shows Jean's home castle in the completely wrong location. Holbein was painting during the height of religious upheaval in Europe. Martin Luther was challenging the Catholic Church. Henry VIII was breaking from Rome. And these 2 ambassadors were trying to navigate the chaos. Every broken object in this painting represents the fracturing of European Christianity. The most mind-bending theory? Some scholars think the skull wasn't meant to be viewed from the side at all, but through a special glass tube held at arm's length. If true, it would line up the skull with both globes, creating a symbolic alignment of earth, heaven, and death, the 3 levels of existence. But if you thought hidden skulls were complex, wait until you see what happens when an artist decides to illustrate literally every joke his culture knows. Peter Bruegel the Elder created what might be history's most elaborate visual comedy routine. Netherlandish Proverbs packs over 120 different sayings and idioms into one chaotic village scene, and it's basically a medieval meme compilation. The original title wasn't even Netherlandish Proverbs, it was The Blue Cloak, or The Topsy-Turvy World. Right in the center, a woman places a blue cloak on her husband, which meant she was cheating on him. The entire painting is about human foolishness, and Bruegel uses those characteristic blank facial expressions he reserved for depicting fools. But the genius is in the details. See that guy filling in a pond after his calf drowned? That's closing the barn door after the horse has bolted. The man carrying a basket of light? He's literally carrying daylight in a basket, doing something completely pointless. The person with one shoe on and one shoe off? That's about maintaining balance in life. Some figures represent multiple proverbs at once. The guy shearing a sheep next to someone shearing a pig illustrates both. One shears sheep, one shears pigs, meaning one person has all the advantages. And shear them, but don't skin them. Don't press your advantage too far. What's fascinating is how many of these sayings have completely vanished from our culture. Having your roof tiled with tarts means being incredibly wealthy. The herring doesn't fry here meant things weren't going according to plan. Bruegel was essentially creating a time capsule of 16th century humor and wisdom. The painting works as social commentary too. This isn't just random silliness, it's a systematic catalog of human weakness and stupidity. Speaking of systematic approaches to art, our final painting takes the concept of hidden meaning to an entirely different level. This is where things get truly mind-bending. Diego Velázquez created what might be the most psychologically complex painting ever made, and scholars are still arguing about what's actually happening in it. On the surface, it's a portrait of 5-year-old Infanta Margaret Teresa surrounded by her court. But look at that mirror in the background. It shows King Philip IV and Queen Mariana. The question that's haunted art historians for centuries: are we seeing their reflection as they pose for Velázquez, or are we seeing the reflection of the painting Velázquez is working on? Here's the kicker: Velázquez painted himself into the scene, looking directly at us. He's wearing the Red Cross of the Order of Santiago, which he didn't actually receive until 3 years after he finished this painting. Legend says that King Philip himself painted that cross onto the canvas after Velázquez died. The positioning is everything. The vanishing point of the perspective lines up exactly with that mysterious figure in the doorway, the Queen's Chamberlain, who might be opening the door for the royal couple to leave. This suggests we're witnessing the end of a royal portrait session. But Velázquez was making a much bigger statement about the nature of art and reality. The paintings on the back wall show scenes from Ovid's Metamorphoses, stories about mortals challenging gods and facing consequences. On the left side, near the Queen's reflection, hangs the story of Minerva and Arachne, 2 women in conflict. On the right, near the King's reflection, is Apollo's victory over Marsyas, a male rivalry. The real genius is how Velázquez uses light and mirrors to create what scholars call the theology of painting. He's showing us that art can capture what mirrors cannot. Not just appearance, but truth, character, and the complex relationships between viewer and viewed. Michael Foucault wrote an entire philosophical treatise about this painting, arguing that it represents the exact moment Western art shifted from classical to modern thinking. When you look at Las Meninas, you are not just seeing a royal portrait. You're experiencing the birth of modern visual consciousness. 3 paintings, 3 completely different approaches to hiding meaning in plain sight. From Holbein's death-obsessed riddles to Bruegel's comedy compilation to Velázquez's reality-bending masterpiece, these artists proved that the best art always works on multiple levels. Next time you're in a museum, remember, every detail might be a clue, and every reflection might be showing you something completely different than what you think you're seeing.